Not one, not two, but three keys to Oregon beating Ohio State this week. Let's start with the rushing battle. Got to win the rushing battle. This isn't like last week against Michigan State where it's just stop the run, because I felt like Oregon had the ability to move the ball exclusively through the air if they needed to, or on the ground if they wanted to. But this first key to the game does go both ways. Oregon has to outrush Ohio State. And I've mentioned it all week on the show, even all summer long, that the three times Ohio State and Oregon have met since the 2009 season when they first met in the 2010 Rose Bowl game with Jeremiah Masoli and company, the team that runs for more yards wins the football game. So I think that carries over, not just because history has said that that's the case, but also because of the way that these teams play offense. Ohio State wants to set up everything with the run. One of the reasons I thought Will Howard to Ohio State made a lot of sense is that Howard at Kansas State was a capable quarterback. He was a high 50s, low 60s completion percentage guy. He's in the low 70s right now through the first 5 games in his Ohio State career. And the reason he has that is twofold. Number one, he has the best receiving core he's ever been surrounded by. Number two, he has a really good running game. And the best season of Will Howard's career came when he had Deuce Vaughn at Kansas State. They won the Big 12 championship, beat TCU, who were the national runners-up that season, to Georgia when they lost 65-7 a couple of seasons ago. So for Ohio State, I don't think they've had a game where they need Will Howard to throw the ball 35 to 40 times. If you tell me, hey, neither one of these teams can get going on the ground, man, you have to just go through the quarterbacks. That is advantage Oregon. I think Dillon Gabriel has not just shown that this season, but throughout the course of his career. I think he is more prepared to handle that in this spot than Will Howard is, who will make some good throws. His receivers will make phenomenal plays. But if Oregon's front, typically you say front 7, but really it's a front 6 with Oregon. If their front 6 takes away that rushing attack, for the defensive line wins at the point of attack, slows down, you're not going to completely eliminate Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. These guys are really, really good backs who can rotate out, keep each other fresh, and are just really outstanding football players. You limit them, you take away what they want to do fundamentally on offense, which is run the football and then set up play action and make the throws and reads simpler for Will Howard. And I think you make things a lot more complex, allow the defensive line to pin their ears back, which has been the biggest strength of this Oregon defense so far this year, are those front 4 guys. So winning the rushing battle. Because then offensively for Oregon, yeah, Dillon Gabriel can throw it 49 times like he did against Idaho. It's not preferred, especially against this Ohio State secondary, but we've seen the Oregon offense playing at its best when they run the football. Oregon State, UCLA, they ran it fine, but Oregon State, they ran the ball well, 7.5 yards a carry. Created a bunch of chunk plays in the first half last week against Michigan State. Game was never really close. Would have been an even more lopsided score if Gabriel had protected the ball. So, winning the rushing battle, definitely key number 1. Key number 2, speaking of Dillon Gabriel, protect the football. Protect the football. You can't give away scoring opportunities. You also can't create momentum plays for Ohio State that allow them to take the Autzen crowd out of it. Is there anything as deflating for a home crowd as an offensive turnover? I mean, maybe the other team scoring a touchdown. I'd still argue it's a turnover because there's all this excitement. You're ready to erupt. You're ready to have that roar. And then, oh, man. Can take the life out of it. Can't have that when you're at home. It's called home field advantage for a reason. Oregon has to be able to lean into it, and I think they have to be able to take points. In some of the big games, we know Dan Lanning's had a propensity to be aggressive, roll the dice. There's a time and a place for it. If Oregon goes down on their opening drive and they go inside the 15-yard line and then they get stopped on a 4th and 2 or a 4th and 1 or anything like that, kick the field goal, take points. I know that you're going to have to score touchdowns, but you're also going to have to, wait for it, score more points than the other team. So I would very much like for Lanning to have that willingness. But in order to even get to that situation, Gabriel has to protect the football. And if you make a mistake against this Ohio State defense, their offense was feeding off that last week against Iowa. They struggled in the first half against Iowa's defense. And I think Iowa and Oregon, pretty comparable defensively. I haven't done a deep dive on the Hawkeyes because Oregon doesn't play them this year. But at the very least, on paper, I'd say Oregon has at least as good of a defense as the Hawkeyes do. And Iowa was on the road. And Ohio State had 7 points at the half. And you know what flipped the tide? You know what gave their offense life? good field position because of turnovers. They stripped Cade McNamara a couple times. I think they picked him off one more time, but they were disruptive up front. And Dillon Gabriel has to be able to protect the football, because if you give this Ohio State offense, however well the defense is playing for Oregon, it can start, the momentum can swing. You can get a lot of different moving parts that work in Ohio State's favor if you give him the ball suddenly on the Oregon 40-yard line because Gabriel got stripped or threw an interception and there was a big return, or if you take away a scoring chance. So, yeah, turnover is always important, but extra for Dillon Gabriel with the way he's been playing the last couple of weeks. And by the way, I know plenty of Oregon fans are worried, and I think your concerns are completely valid. Completely valid, because we have seen 3 picks inside the 5 in the last 2 games. I think Dillon Gabriel figures it out. It's not about getting in the weight room and suddenly making your arm 5 times stronger than it was the week before. It's just about making smarter decisions, not forcing the issue. And if Will Stein and Dan Lanning get in his head in the best way and tell him, hey, we need you to be yourself. Don't try and be something that you're not. Don't force what isn't there. Take what is available to you. The Oregon offense will have enough success to win this football game. But Gabriel's got to give him that chance. So Dillon Gabriel protecting the football, that is key number 2. Everyone has to. Of course, it starts with a quarterback because he's the guy who's had the issue with that so far this year. Will Howard's been picked off 3 times. Forcing a turnover never hurts. Never hurts, especially to get the crowd back into it. But I think Gabriel protecting the football, that's key number 2. Key number 3, haven't gotten to this one yet this year, but this game feels like the most appropriate one because it should be the closest of the bunch. Special teams. Special teams. Oregon's got to avoid miscues and be solid on special teams. If you think back to the 5 losses, there have been 5 losses in the Dan Lanning era. 3 to Washington, 1 to Georgia, and 1 to Oregon State. The Georgia game, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole again. The 3rd Washington game, no special teams, massive miscues. But of the 5 losses, 2 of them have had special teams miscues, and I factor into that making a decision to leave points on the board. Last year against Washington, kicked that field goal. If Camden Lewis is kicking for the win rather than for the tie, that's a different kind of pressure. Maybe he makes it. I don't know. It's still a lot of pressure either way, but at the very least, Oregon gets to overtime. So when you do have the opportunity, and if Lanning makes the decision to say, hey, let's kick a 32-yard field goal. Let's put some trust in Atticus Sappington, who has been solid. He's not kicking extra points this year, and, he's missed 2 of them. We'll all be holding our breath is all I will say on that particular front. But when the opportunity presents itself, you have to be solid. But go back to another game that Dan Lanning lost. Oregon State in 2022. Special teams, disastrous in 2 ways. Number 1, drop a punt on the 1-yard line, give Oregon State a free touchdown. Number 2, poor kickoff coverage, have a face mask, give them the ball at the 30-something yard line immediately. Can't have those sorts of situations in a game like this. Ohio State had a big win against Michigan years ago. I don't think Ryan Day might have been the head coach. Might have still been Urban Meyer. Don't remember the exact year off the top of my head. But they had a block punt in the second half. And I just think about those sorts of games when it allows for one team to gain such a big advantage. I don't want to have to think or worry about special teams. If they are just a net neutral, I'll be happy with that. Oregon doesn't need to have explosive plays in the return game like they did against Boise State. They don't need to hit a 50-yarder necessarily. Well, maybe Andrew Boyle will have to at some point. I don't know. We'll see how the game plays out. But it doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, greatest special teams day ever. The special teams just can't be a hindrance towards Oregon's offense and defense working to outplay Ohio State, which is going to be tough. So those are the 3 keys. Win the rushing battle, protect the football, no miscues on special teams.